All right, hello. Welcome to the Cloud Custodian community meeting for April 2nd. We had a little bit of pre-show chat. I just want to try to sum it up here. Stephen, thanks for the question, talking about the changes that Kapil made in this 9154 pull request. The question was about updating permissions, and this was not a functional change to a policy. We're not using any more permissions. This was just adding some annotations to the custodian resources, and I think it was just resources, to make sure that they describe the permissions that they will need for things like for fetching tags. Is that a fair summary, or is that missing anything critical there?
Yeah, that's a totally fair summary. I actually wanted to add an additional tangent on that, which is the config types. We added some missing config types. I think Q4 last year started validating all the config types to make sure they were actually valid, and we actually ended up removing two, so like a completely separate issue for RDS snapshots and EBS snapshots, and people were using those for doing a config poll rule. So we'll need to grow an additional facility for not a config type, but a config poll type, just to be able to capture that, because it's not a CFM type, it's not a config type. And yeah, it's something that popped into mind as I looked at that PR description.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. And Stephen, yeah, I think you all use config poll rules pretty regularly, right?
Yes. Yes,
cool.
we use that quite a bit.
Yeah, so good to know.
So like I think in roughly, I think released Q4 last year, we broke config poll types.
There was a snapshot.
RDS snapshots, EBS snapshots both broke because of the CFN, and we started validating config types and cleared out ones that were invalid. So we need to have some additional facility to add that back in for config poll rules. So it's a fairly minor fix. If that's something that, if you're using those and you care about that, that would be, a relatively easy contribution.
Okay, cool.
Neat. Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. And then just kind of springing off of that pull request, I did notice that someone in one of the discussions here on this 7455 discussion was asking a bit about which permissions Cloud Custodian needs. And we have in the past, we have some amount of early IAM guidance around what a good starter set of permissions would be. And it looks like someone's volunteering to create some more documentation around that, which I say is great. More documentation is cool. Something we have also tried to help people with before is, beyond just a generic starter set, is there a good way to infer the permissions that a set of policies needs? And this goes back to what Kapil was mentioning in this PR about trying to update the annotations. The way that we try to discover the IAM permissions a policy needs is by looking at permission annotations on the resource type and any filters or actions that you're using. That's not perfect. I think, Kapil, you called it an aspirational goal, and that feels right. I have, sorry.
Most of that PR is just fixing the resource type permissions. Cool. Filters and actions, we do document for AWS and GCP into the reference docs on the permissions that we know that the thing needs. There's, because it's informational, we don't have like huge notion that it's reliable as well. But it's mostly informational what we have right now.
Cool. Yeah, and when we've had people ask questions, I have shared this. I've used this personally just as a good starting point. And what it does is a little script. I'll put a link in the community notes too. I think it's in some discussions where it can go look at the permission annotations of all the policies in a set, and then just kind of build up all the IAM permissions that we know we need. And like you're saying, it's probably going to be missing something. But if you're just starting with kind of generic starter set, I know, Stephen, you mentioned you try to keep a pretty minimal set of permissions that you need.
Yeah.
Sometimes looking at the annotations across all the resource types, the filters, the actions that you're using, you can find some obvious things that you're missing. And it's not going to be a one-stop shop to get you the right policy, but it might help. It might be some
But it
a
only
useful input.
has providers that Custodian supports as well.
Exactly. Yep, for sure.
What was that?
Yeah.
It applies to AWS and GCP. Like we don't have. I mean, Azure's. We probably could get something for Azure because it's fairly
Oh, right. Okay.
apply to OCI. It doesn't apply to OpenStack. Doesn't apply to Tencent. We don't have. We don't carry that metadata for some of the other providers because it's been informational, and we were trying to get those things done. Yeah, as we turn into operational, it's potentially worth revisiting to see what's viable in those providers.
Mm. So, sorry, just circling back on the those resource types that got deprecated because they weren't config supported resource types. For config pull rule, you were saying that might be an easy contribution to add if we needed to add, support for a resource that doesn't have config support. Were you talking about just adding like the CFN type and not including the config type? Yeah,
it's more than that. So config poll rule will fall back to CFN type
yes.
if a type doesn't exist. The challenge is CFN itself does not support snapshots on resources. It's not data point.
But you can use the like ignore support check or whatever. Ignore support check is true, then it kind of bypasses that config type check.
I'm not sure because I think somebody commented that when we fixed that, when we started validating those things and cleaning them up, that they said it was broken. So I don't know if that's actually the case, although it's probably easy to check. So what I was actually thinking instead, if that works, that's one thing that's worth validating. Ignore support check.
Basically, like if the CFN type is not there, then even if you have that ignore support check thing, even if you're bypassing that, then it'll still fail on the CFN type check.
Problem is with that one. Yeah, so that bites really work. We still need a new metadata piece called like config poll type. Because when we go to post the evaluations, we have to do it against a type, and ignore config type. I don't know what we end up defaulting to, I guess is my question. Yeah, we default to CFN type, and unfortunately, for the snapshot resources, there is no CFN type.
Yeah, totally. There's no CFN type.
So we need a new type like metadata on that resource, like config poll type, that is the fallback. So ignore type check, sure. We'll keep the support for that. But right now the fallback is big type. Sorry, it's actually CFN type right now. CFN type, and then if that doesn't exist, we need to go back to config poll type, and we should probably be doing validation on that in the validate from the mode. We could probably deprecate ignore config type stuff for the poll. Like the poll rules doesn't really care about config type support, does it? Like I don't know why we even have that flag there.
I don't know. In all our policies, we use that ignore type set to true, or else sometimes we get issues.
Yeah, it's only there if the resource is supported in CloudFormation but not config. But right now, we're talking about like for snapshots, it's about neither config nor CFN supports it, and we need an additional capability or a metadata to express that to support snapshots.
Okay.
I mean, and so like the path would be like add a line to RDS snapshot, an EBS snapshot for like config poll type, and then another line inside of the config poll mode to if CFN type is empty,
I see. Yeah.
The other type.
Got it. Makes sense. Also checking out that PR, it looks like most of them are those kind of permission changes. S3, we added a bunch of stuff. It's all kind of Git, ACLs, Git, lifecycle, all that. It's all pretty much stuff that's already being called. I see for SageMaker, I think SageMaker was missing pulling tags. And I think that functionality was added on the SageMaker resource type. And then I'm also looking at WAF, and I see something was removed for WAF. It says remove WAF get web ACL. So what is that? Yeah. This the remove web ACL thing. Is this like, why are we removing permission? So does this actually again, this doesn't change any functionality. This is just basically for tracking the permissions that are associated with, I guess,
Wait,
basic describe calls on resources, right?
yeah. AJ, can you scroll down to the type for this? I think it's because the spelling. Yeah, it's the ACL, all uppercase in the ACL versus lowercase. So we do some auto generation based on the enums, like some of the method
Ooh.
match. And unfortunately for WAF, it comes back lowercase ACL or lowercase CL on the autogen. And so we're removing the autogen to make it explicit.
Oh, I see. Okay. I see that. I see that difference there. Okay. One is lowercase. Got it. Okay, cool. And then for SageMaker as well, it looks like there is now basically when you call the SageMaker resource type, it also will call the tags type, or it'll also make the tags call, I believe. This is the only thing where there could be like a functional type, or not a functional change, but like if someone is using SageMaker, if they don't have this thing, this is the only one I was seeing though.
That seems true, that the augment now would try to list tags where it wouldn't have before. Oh, but it looks like, we already had
I was just moving it into a describe so that I can support config.
Oh, it was already doing that.
Oh, it was already, you're right. Okay.
Okay, we're good then.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for breaking this one down. This makes more sense. It's basically just
it's bookkeeping.
Yes, yeah, totally.
But the questions are good. It's good to talk through these things, especially when it looks like there's a lot going on. So good questions.
For sure.
Cool. All right, Kapil, I know you mentioned a couple things in chat that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, so looking at a PyCon sprint, which I guess it's been a few years since we've done one of these. PyCon's in Pittsburgh in May, middle of May, and looking at doing a sprint at the PyCon sprint. I will try to get, that's now 6 weeks or 7 weeks away, so gonna try to get that more formalized and get that out to Slack and mailing list channels. You do not have to have a PyCon ticket to attend the sprints. You do have to get to Pittsburgh and provide accommodation. I think we talked, I think I would be interested in like 2 focus areas for the sprint. And it really just depends on who shows. There's also a lot of floaters, people that are just looking for projects to contribute to or hanging out. Documentation, I think, is one on narrative style. And then the second one is I'd like to beef up the AWS CC stuff to support additional event modes and hooks, which I know Patricia and I have talked about, but we still haven't. Might be good to just get into a space and have dedicated time to work on it.
All right. So AWS CC, you said CloudFormation hooks.
CloudFormation hooks and also supporting some of the event nodes, like some of the existing AWS.
Okay.
Um, uh, the one of the topic was CNCF security audit. We are gonna try to. We've done it. We're trying to get the results published. Hopefully next week. This is going to require some coordination on a blog post. And yeah, I'll probably ping a few maintainers. Producer and AJ, y'all are on hook from me trying to ping you yesterday. And I don't know that there's a whole lot here for us to do. We're effectively, it's going to be a 3-way blog post. It's going to be like the security org that helps work on this stuff is going to be CNCF, and then it's going to be us. We don't actually technically have a blog right now, so we can just give CNCF blog content. But I think they actually want the audit result published off the main website, so we'll probably stick it into the website repo and just have it there as a artifact.
Cool.
In the PyCon sprint, what did you say, Kapil? Will it be hosted virtually, or do we have to be there?
It'll be in person.
Okay, got it.
It's a good question on whether or not we could probably support remote participants, but that's a reasonable consideration. Yeah, we definitely like create a separate sprint Slack. I don't know that like the room setup isn't really super great for doing like we can't do like it's on a private room. It's like a table, let's say, so we can't like have like a screen for like remote participants per se, but we could definitely, if people were interested in participating remotely, can we do a Slack and then try to do like like a starting kickoff hangout and ending hangout at the end, by the end of the day. That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that seems good to do the remote, because I don't know if you were going to make a participant.
No.
It doesn't look like I would be.
Yeah.
But I would like to do it.
That's why I was curious if it would be virtual. I think we would be like happy to dial in and contribute.
That's a good point. Sorry, the last topic I had in here were Docker images. Gosh, what is the PR? A 93, 92. I'm trying to move our Docker images over to Wolfie. Wolfie, for those not familiar, is a open source Linux distribution based on Alpine, but moves it over to glibc. It is produced by a startup called ShaneGuard that's really into supply chain security and tries to automate building images directly from upstream with all the patches. Although there's just maybe a separate discussion about libxz and like the hack that almost went around the world. But like in general, because they stay very close to upstream, it tends to have the lowest CD count that's out there. And for organizations that are sensitive to that, this provides a very good secure default base, let's say, for images. There's 2 additional topics on that. One is it's secure at the time we publish it with 0 CVs, but no distro. I mean, the only thing that's secure but is going to be the things that are constantly updated. So there's 2 different topics here. One is the fact that like by default we ship jumbo images. We ship these 900 megabyte images, which are just grotesque from a size perspective. Like we could be down to 100 megs, 150 megs if we're just shipping on a provider specific basis. And it's unfortunately Azure that tends to cause the blowout. Like we publish these 7 left images, and I think they're like Yeah, they're at like right at 150. So the question on that topic is whether or not we whether or not we should also be producing provider-specific Docker images just to be able to minimize it. We could probably also do, there's some random script from a third party. Azure never addressed this issue. I could probably link to it. It's been 3 or 4 years down the road since it was first filed, as far as them slowing down their SDKs and everyone noting that this, the Azure CLI takes a gig of space and is a dependency chain nightmare. So
Was that like Azure tree shaking type script that kind of nuked all the dependencies you weren't using, or kept only the most recent API versions or something like that?
Most recent API versions, because Azure everything, because they are like IDEs, it's multiple orders of magnitude. It's like 10x or 20. It's multiple orders of magnitude larger than anything else. I think it adds about 400 megabytes to the image. Although, as I say that, I kind of wonder where else that size is coming from, because we published C7M left, and it's 150, and that's including AWS, just because that's currently part of core, and that gets Bodo, which is 85 megs. So I
thought AWS CC, when it pulled in the data sources, that added a bunch too.
I don't know that it does.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking about docs. I may be thinking about docs.
The docs get exploded out. The docs got big with that, but the actual zip file, like, it's runtime generated, and we assemble it. Actually, that's a good question. How big is that wheel? Sorry. The other topic on Docker images is whether or not we should be rebuilding post-release on older images, so that we can keep that CD count low for previous releases. And then on what basis do we want to support that? Do we update the last 3 releases for 3 months or 6 months? And it's really, just a service per se. Technically, or do we provide easy capabilities for other people to do that themselves directly? I just open question. Yeah. There was one other thing with Wolfie. Azure also throws a boatload of warnings because of moving to Python 3.12 and having some deprecated syntax stuff in there. I don't know if that's because we need to update particular packages, but it's about a dozen. I am potentially looking at just whether or not we squelch deprecation warnings to make sure that, like, when you're using that, it doesn't throw a bunch of, it's part of the reason it's failing the CI tests right now is because we grab standard out and it's full of warnings right now, or standard error.
Sorry, I know you said there were a bunch of warnings. What was spitting out those warnings?
Azure SDKs will spit out some deprecation warnings. Sorry, I was gonna try to share quickly. So you can see my screen. So at the top of this,
not yet.
And see your screen.
Go. Got a second handshake. Oh, right. Sorry. There is. Let's see that. Okay. We just get all these syntax warnings. Here, I'll just paste this. This is probably easier. So like I was just running the image and just take back random stuff that looks like here's one full one. And so Azure's got a couple of these. And rather than like every time you run a custodian command, rather than seeing that stuff, like a dozen of those, like why don't we just squelch deprecation warnings for this case? And we can get past that. Or we alternatively look at like whether or not we can update those packages, and hopefully they support Python 3.12. It's been out for a while. The only other PR I was interested in bringing up was also this one. 9273, which is Event Bridge Scheduler for Lambdas instead of periodic mode. Adding a new mode for the scheduler stuff because it's much more scalable. Like Event Bridge, you get like 1,000 and you can soft ask them for more, but like scheduler allows for like 1 million by default. So like, all those things. I do think we should probably put a warning in on both scheduler and periodic that you should not use this for anything with large cardinality, because it is the #1 source of people running into problems with Lambda if they're not doing event-based.
So would this be a new mode type?
Yes, it would be a new.
Ooh.
It was originally looking at trying to do it on top of periodic, but like there was a lot of migration, additional API calls that had to be done for migration that we want to get. So cleaning, like just making it a separate execution mode keeps it like
Nice.
makes it orthogonal and zero cost for people that aren't accepted. They migrate.
That's awesome. Yeah, we've had to scale the number of I guess what is it? CloudWatch rules or Event Bridge rules, just because they only allow like 1,000, or no, I'm sorry, I think default is what, 300.
300,
yeah, so we had to bump those up in certain regions. But yeah, this looks interesting.
If you have periodic policies which have their own issues, to be fair, then this lets you get rid of that headroom off your line.
1 million schedules per region. That's crazy.
Yeah, as a default. Yeah, it definitely makes this a non-issue.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's just a concern there around migrating policies. So I think I missed a lot of the discussion in here. So the original thing was to add, the original request was to take periodic mode and tweak it so that it would change the rules under the hood. But you're saying we're going to make it a new execution mode instead.
New mode.
Yeah, the original thing was just like attributes on periodic mode, and it would like try to figure out how to switch between the two of them automatically. But that required doing a bunch of additional API calls, which if you weren't,
I see that being nuts.
There.
Okay.
Yeah.
So making a separate execution mode made that a bit cleaner. I think this is also adding to Mu to try to do some additional, like to help you with cleanups and switch outs. And potentially, I guess potentially we should add, I don't know where we put migration docs between the two. I guess inside of that doc on the Lambda modes and like how to switch from one to the other. But yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty close. I think I haven't looked at it since I last commented last week. But it seemed like we were getting close to it, getting this landed.
So I imagine it'd be fairly similar, except we changed the mode type to scheduler, and then I'm guessing instead of does this support things like cron and like rate type stuff? Is it
Yep.
very similar to?
It pretty much like if you're using an event, a bridge rule with a cron schedule, this pretty much, I think it has some additional configuration like on time zone and other things like.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Cool. So just a few more parameters then.
Yeah, I mean, the question on migration is like, if you switch out, like, how do you clean up the old one and get to the new one? Like, that's the like, how do you clean up the event bridge rule, and so that when you switch out, that you don't get two. And that's what some of the Muse support in here was for. And there's also this separate notion like you can have multiple scheduler groups and like, or migration between scheduler groups, like. But like I said, this is coming along. There's some docs already in the PR. We probably need maybe a little bit more docs on, being explicit on how to migrate.
Cool. I wonder if you can have two triggers. If you can have the event bridge like while you're migrating, so you can have the rule that's hooked up, and then if you were to add this, it would add that integration as a trigger, and then you can just go back and blow away the rule potentially.
Yeah, okay with the policy executing twice like that.
Yeah, for a short time. Anyway, yeah, this is cool. Thanks for raising this one.
All right, that's a good one. We got a bunch of topics today. It's cool.
I have a topic since we were talking about IAM.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, so I was we have like a generic role for all our policies, and lately there have been some interest where like people want to take specific actions in production environment and internally. So I was looking at session policy that would like help us create a boundary with regards to what permission someone could like run their policies with, versus like getting a brand new role created for every specific pod. Would that be of interest, Phil or AJ?
I mean, the question mark on that is that the boundary on the role assumes a deny set, and like we know the allow set. Like I mean, we're saying deny all. Like there's not a clear way to say. Like we don't know what the role is, right? And so we don't know what to deny in the role. We only know what we need to allow. So I'm just not clear how that would work in practice.
So, for example, when we do an assumed role on a generic role, and alongside that, reading the AWS docs, I see they have a way to pass in a session policy, and that session policy would be a subset of the main role that is getting assumed.
Yeah, the scope down, right?
Yeah.
It's a scope down though through denies. I thought it's not a scope down through allows, and we know what we need. We don't know what we need to deny.
Got it. Yeah, I definitely missed that one. Yeah, I definitely missed that. It was deny on the scope down versus putting an allow. Got it. Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong. Like, if there is a allow aspect on it, then that's potentially something we could explore.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, this is the doc I was looking at, and looks like we could potentially do an allow on the session policy. I'm not sure. I'll do some exploration and probably try to write something up.
Cool. It definitely, yeah. If you, as you explore, just drop a GitHub issue.
Okay, got it.
Well, I mean, we'll have to do some sort of like flag or something, or enable that behavior. But yeah, sounds interesting.
Got it. Thanks.
Cool, thanks. Anyone else have other topics to bring up or issues, PRs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sorry, I'm just looking through it. Jason, you're right. I think it does allow for the allows. I'm just thinking of like, thinking of IAM boundaries, which are more script down, but this does allow for you just to say, this is what I need, and go for the generic. So yeah, it does seem reasonable.
Got it. All right, thanks. Yeah, I'll try to get a proposal created. I was also trying to write something up for an internal use.
I want to be cautious because, again, like as we started this meeting, we were talking about how these things are informational. We don't have a whole lot of like trust in their being, accurate 100%. So, or being fully inclusive of all the permissions necessary. So. There's some operational risk aspects on this stuff. I mean, but we're trying to make it better, and the only way we're to get to the goal is probably by, banging on it and seeing what breaks.
Yep, sounds good.
Cool. Well, thanks. That's a good topic. All right. Any other topics, though? Anyone have questions or anything else to bring up?
I'm good on my side.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. I guess the top agenda item, I kind of skipped over it before, but I know, Stephen, you would run into this where after the latest custodian release, there were it looked like there were a couple sub packages that just didn't get published right away. So people had some dependency conflicts. So if anyone happened to run that, you should be fine now. I don't know if there's anything to note about it beyond that. I think people are pretty good.
I get the humans out of the loop because I actually don't know what happened here. Like, some of them got published and some of them didn't, and it's like a single command on the make file to do both. So I assume something, Heisenberg, but like, if we can get the machine to publish it, then hopefully we'll see when it fails that we'll have the log on the failure itself, to be clear on. But yeah, apologies. This I think bit a few people. So yeah.
Oh, but
all good. Yeah, it was ours was with the I think it was GCP, C7N GCP. Just realized there wasn't a release. Basically, we're installing 9.35 and then I think it was 4.33 for GCP, and then it was falling back. And then I started looking and saw that the GCP was didn't get upgraded with it. But yeah, I can run a quick check on that stuff, I guess, when we do releases, at least from the C7N and GCP perspective. We do some quick local testing. So yeah, I'll call it out if I see anything weird.
Yeah, appreciate it, and definitely, like, I mean, the stuff is automated, so like that shouldn't have happened. And I'm just trying to think of like, right now we pull the releases out of like CI builds the releases, and then we pull them down, and then we publish them from a developer station. But like we've been trying to get I think we've added the passwordless publication stuff, the trusted publisher stuff to PyPy, so we could start getting there. I think the only real question that's come up with the EDE automation of releases is the fact that we have to manually touch up the release notes right now. And if we can figure that last bit out, then we can probably make this not a human problem to deal with. The human pushes the button and the release pops out. into all the right places and channels. We have done this with a few other repos in the custodian org, but the way those do it and the way that the custodian repo does it are a little different because of this release note manual edit.
Would it be worth trying to have that changelog generation where the release notes go to a changelog file or something, so we could have the manual edits in a PR or something before we do that release tag, and then it would pull from there instead of trying to generate on demand?
Possibly. I mean, I actually I try to include I actually use the GitHub generate release notes too, because it can the new contributors, and I try to add that. So like there's additional data there I feel like we would want. But could we encapsulate that into a script and, get that created as an artifact? Like I know there's like town crier and a bunch of other tools that will like stuff. So yeah, maybe anybody wants to work on it, like, file an issue, like let's discuss. That's definitely that's a viable path to getting out of the, pull down artifacts and change log generate with those artifacts and manually edit and combine with GitHub AutoGen. I mean, we could just ask ChatGPT or,
That's all right.
But no, that sounds like a good place to potentially explore, AJ. So, yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, then last call for other topics. No. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Good one today. A lot of good discussion. Try to keep the notes. Make sure they all make sense after this. But thanks for the questions and the ideas and all the discussion. And we'll see you all in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Cheers.